discussing this whole issue of athletes profiting from their own likenesses. I think in a previous interview, you suggested that the financial benefits that have been exaggerated. That student athletes think that there's a lot more money involved in that. Is that true? Is that?
Oh, I believe that to be true. Obviously, yeah. to know for sure, we'd have to do right. some kind of extensive research. But there are a number of narratives out there where student athletes believe that if they win the O'Banion case, that we're talking about hundreds and thousands of dollars. There was the story I love to tell is right around the Super Bowl last year. There was I'll leave the names out of it, but there were two Seattle Seahawks who got up and talked about this, and one of them said, hey, I should be paid. I should have been paid as a college student athlete because there was too much of my time, or so much of my time was taken up in athletics. I didn't have time to be a student. Well, first of all, no paycheck alleviates that. What we first started talking about maybe alleviates that. How we address that issue. A paycheck doesn't take care of that. Then the other, more to your point, the other young man talked about how his institution, where he had gone to school, made millions and millions and millions of dollars off of jersey sales. Right. He said, my institution made $5.6 million last year off of jersey sales. Where's my portion of that? So when I heard that, I thought, that sounds a little off. So I went back and did a little research, and his institution last year made $56,000 on jersey licensing, and that's all jerseys. That's not football. So the dollars have been exaggerated, and frankly, I have to be quite honest with you. I blame lawyers. I can, and I have lawyers in my family, so I apologize for dissing them all with one stroke. But I can tell you right now, in all of this, who's gaining are lawyers. I'm not sure where students are really benefiting.
A related question too, and again, I think this just goes.
I spoke at one point to his very chagrined athletic director, who said, "Well, I spoke to him, and he said that's not really what he meant. That sometimes he was
quite a stir.
Yeah, it did. That he was too tired to get out of bed to go to the training table or the cafeteria where the food was available to him, and so he was hungry." But obviously, the story played out in a certain way. I don't believe our student athletes have ever lacked for sufficient nutrition. I do think that our rules have been such that they were way too complicated. We could feed walk-ons, those who weren't on scholarship sometimes, but not other times, and sometimes we had to deduct it from their meal plan, and we could, here's my favorite, we could, as kind of between meal replenishment, we could provide bagels, but not cream cheese. Or not peanut butter, because that was protein, and that, that constituted a meal. And so I think the real advantage of what has been called unlimited meals that came about last summer has been just to deregulate it, and all we have to worry about is what's the best way for us to provide the best nutrition for student athletes. So that happened last summer. The incidentals really is about, our scholarship has been tuition, fees, room, board, and books. And there are real costs to a student who, needs to go home, hopefully, at least a couple of times a year. And home may be a 75-mile car ride, but they might not have a car. So, it's a bus ride. Or it might be, for an international student, it might be, several $1,000 ticket. Now, there have been other mechanisms for students who exhibited need, whose family exhibited need. And this is where I don't think we've done a good job of telling the story, and when I say that, not crafting a story, but getting the facts out there. And students who exhibit need can receive up to, I think this year it's $5,800 in a Pell Grant. That wouldn't apply to international kids, that would only apply to U.S. citizens. But $5,800, so those families exhibiting the most need, $5,800. So that's essentially $3,000 a semester. If you're talking about transportation home, doing your laundry, some things that aren't paid for in that use of textbook portion of the scholarship, so pens and pencils and paper that all students need. We started it this year, Penn State has even gone to a program where we're providing each of our student athletes an iPad at the beginning of the year. And it's dual purpose, certainly academic, and ways for them to discover new ways of taking notes and certainly some of their research, but also athletic. Our coaches, it's a coach's tool. Our coaches are taking advantage of sending film clips and game plans and other things. So we've already been able to do that. But there's been other ways, but it hasn't been standard. It hasn't been uniform. And I think the going cost of attendance has been, I think it's the right thing to do. To the tune of our incremental costs for adding $4,700 stipend, cost of attendance, I think what they're calling delta or gap, for 362 full ride equivalencies is $1.75 million. That just for us to stay even.
Is that the one that's a percentage of the cost of?
It's not.
No, what was that thing?
It's the percentage.
There was one thing where I remember seeing where the Big Ten was ranked, where each athlete got a certain amount based on cost, based on what tuition was. So Penn State was one of the higher ones in the Big Ten.
That was probably a way early on for people to estimate what they thought folks' cost of attendance is going to be. But cost of attendance is a formula that essentially each school gets to decide, but it's based on some principles established by the federal government, by federal financial aid regulations.
Right.
But as we are finding, and this is probably the flaw in what we've done, and I can easily say this because we're one of the higher costs of attendance, so I can sit here and say that I'm not worried about it. We've got a nice number. My CFO doesn't like it because of that $1.75 million. Yeah. But from a recruiting perspective, from a feeling like from our students feeling like they're getting a fair shake, if you will, we feel good about where we are. But what we're finding out industry wide is wide variety. I think the lowest I've seen is 1,300, 1,400, 1,500, something like that, and the highest is 5,200. There might be one that's 6, but maybe one. So we're at the high end. We're definitely at the high end, but you've seen a lot of moaning and groaning, and again, this is a federal number, and this is managed by, controlled by your financial aid offices. It's not determined by athletics and not going to be influenced by athletics, but by their own admissions, lots of financial aid offices are saying, well, we haven't gone back and looked at that number in several years.
Yeah, right.
So maybe it's time that we go back and look at that number.
Kind of talking about the same thing you're talking about.
They probably used a percentage to kind of estimate it, but it's not a percentage number at all.
Would you, it looks like it's headed in the direction of FBS football governing itself and maybe other sports being a separate entity. Is that good? Is that good for you? What do you think about that? And do you agree that it's headed in that direction?
Well, it depends on what you're asking, what you mean by that. We now have the Autonomous 5 conferences that are led by or that are dominating. The issues that we are dealing with in the Autonomous 5 conferences are dominated by either football itself or by the ramifications of the revenue that football produces.
Right.
Yeah. So I would say we're already there. We made that step when we created autonomy for those 5 conferences, and I think probably, I mean, the cost of attendance issue, I believe, we had to get done for a variety of reasons, for leading with it's the right thing to do. But I also believe that we really set ourselves up for criticism and some misunderstanding about what we were doing or weren't doing by not having a cost of attendance. So I think there were a few things, we needed to do that and we couldn't get it done. I mean, I remember standing on the floor at the NCAA convention as the athletic director at Cal, probably 5, maybe even 6 years ago, and we were prepared to vote up or vote down cost of attendance then as a $2,000 stipend for everyone. Every school, same thing, and at that point, that was a relatively new concept, and several of us, I was on the, whatever the governing board at that point was, one of the cabinets, or cabinets or councils, and a number of the athletic directors in that group said, hey, we need to do this, but we're not ready yet. We had not assessed the Title IX ramifications. We had not assessed the cost. And Mike Alden, who's just the most recently retired athletic director at Missouri, and I both stood up on the convention floor and said, hey, we are for this, but we need to delay its implementation a year. And we passed that, and then it died. That it just we could never then bring it. We could never get it because of the smaller schools that weren't necessarily opposed to it on merit or philosophy or value, but they couldn't. They felt they couldn't afford to do it. And I'm sympathetic to that. I've been at I've been at a couple of those schools, and I'm very sympathetic to that. But I think there are larger issues looming now. Again, we've talked about some of it with the lawsuits and frankly some of our own public relations challenges about what intercollegiate athletics is really about.
No, wasn't the beloved Mark Emmert a driving force behind that?
A driving force
behind bringing up the cost of attendance for you guys to vote on.
I mean, he was certainly supportive.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was certainly supportive, but I don't know an autonomous. Well, I do know one Boston College, an autonomous 5 athletic director who was not supportive. I mean, that vote was 65 to 1 or something,
Yeah.
and I think Boston College's objections were pretty philosophical.
That's interesting. I know this is a difficult subject to revisit, but I haven't had a chance. I may have asked you about this before, but some time ago, when the wins were reinstated, feel free to blow your eyes at this question again. But
I don't have any problem with you bringing it up.
Okay. When the wins were reinstated,
Yep.
the stickers went on the helmets. You tweeted out. I'll admit to a personal declaration here. I am a Penn State alum. And I actually thought it was refreshing. But then, and I was a little disappointed that you had to backtrack then. If you were to do it all over again, how would you handle that? Did you feel pressure to then come back out and say, I'll apologize for your apology?
What I backtracked on was the tweet, and that I attempted to address the very important issue over Twitter and in 140 characters, and frankly that I randomly chose what happened to end up being a Michigan grad who apparently consistently gives Penn State grads trouble, which I knew none. I had about 100 of them in my feed, and I just picked one out, and so my apology. And my backtrack, if you will, was about being insensitive and inappropriate with the way in which I went about communicating my feelings about us wearing the 409 stickers, and it happened to be hockey. It was only hockey because they were the first ones out.
Right.
You know, and it doesn't get any better than.
And they have helmets.
And they have helmets, and you know, we had several other teams that had planned to do something on Saturday or Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon that. We were all in Washington D.C. at the NCAA convention at the time. My hope, what I was trying to do, was as a newbie to Penn State and as a outsider, or coming from the outside, certainly. I had an experience with friends and colleagues and others in the industry. I knew they didn't understand what 409 meant.
Right.
And I'll be honest, I didn't fully understand what 409 meant. I knew it was more than wins. I did know that. Obviously that situation helped me learn even more. But I knew it was more than wins. I know I have come to learn, and I know I have lots more to learn, but what's in the heart of Penn Staters. You know, at that point I'd been in this department, I'd been on the campus, I don't know, 4 or 5 months, maybe. I mean, this university and this athletic department, from a values perspective, you know, are we perfect? No, absolutely not, of course not. But from a values perspective, I think do it as well as anybody in college athletics. And I want the rest of the world to know that. And if we do things that shut them off, that close down their willingness to hear who truly we really are, I think that's shooting ourselves in the foot. I think it's a lost opportunity. And that's all I absolutely think restoring the wins to Coach Paterno is to be celebrated, but maybe not at that moment, and not in that way, because we know what some of the criticisms are of us externally, and how do we not poke those? That's what that was about. I mean, the thing that probably hurt me the most about that was those that felt I was being critical of who Penn State is, our history and tradition, and our values. Nothing could be further from the truth. I am hoping that we can act in a way, or we can do things in a way, respond in a way that helps others open their eyes and ears and allow us to tell a story.
Yeah, it was one of those situations that the alumni are not monolithic. Right? It's not a monolith. So not everyone feels that, everyone has
You're a master from the
great.
state.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes people think that, they think of, especially in light of the last few years, they think all alumni feel the same way.
All anything do not feel the same way about anything, right?
Right, yeah. Do you feel like there was an opportunity maybe to have that conversation? Do you wish the conversation had gone further about that?
Well, I think it
that there
has.
were serious concerns about,
Yeah.
everything that went on, and that, do you think?
I think it has. I actually, that's why I don't roll my eyes, and that's why I don't mind having this conversation. Every time it comes up, I do get a new rash of, and it's smaller every time, emails or tweets, or because people have strong opinions, and they're different. But it wasn't necessarily easy, but so all that happened on like a Sunday afternoon or whatever it was, and I picked up the phone and called Jeff and Jeff Nelson and Phil Eston, and I said, guys, I think we have an issue that we need to address, and that week we then just went out of our way to get me out. I did a couple of radio shows, and I didn't duck it.
Right.
I mean, that was the worst thing I could have done. It was really, really important that people understand. They didn't have to agree with it, And they could say, I don't think she should have done that, or that would, but that's fine. I want to be criticized for actually what I did and what I meant. And if people want to criticize me for that, that's fine. What hurt was I was criticized for something that actually was not what was going on.
So you didn't feel shut down by that? Because
No.
I thought the perception from some people was that you can't, that's like, you can't express that opinion. That's unacceptable. You can't express that opinion.
Yeah, well,
So you did not feel shut down?
not at
by
all,
that?
not at all. And if anything, I mean, again, it was a difficult experience for sure. I happen to think we probably learn more from difficult than anything in life, but doesn't mean it's comfortable going through it. But it gave me an opportunity to learn more, and I think it also gave me an opportunity to really talk about what some of my goals were, again, a little bit with this outside perspective about how we accomplish what it is we want to accomplish. Because certainly from the minute I set foot on this campus, it's a very proud campus community, very proud alumni community, and one of the things through all of the difficulties and the challenges that Penn State has had over the course of the last 3 plus almost 4 years now, has been this issue of, will other people think this, or really uncalled for characterizations of Penn State, etc. Through the course of this, I had people tell me, well, we don't care what other people think. Well, I actually think we do, and you do, and so how do we, how do we take this on? And that's what was at the heart of what I was trying to do.
Right.
How many caravan stops are you going to do, and how many of these kind of things?
I am going to do 5 this week, because our Board of Trustees are in town starting on Thursday, so I'll go back. And I will do 6 the second week.
You're doing almost all of the caravans.
I'm doing all of them but Pittsburgh on Thursday night,
right.
and it's a shame to miss Pittsburgh because I know it'll be great, but
Yeah.
my obligations with the board trump that. How many of these I'm doing?
I think you're going to do at least 3 more on the second week.
Oh, okay.
May I switch gears a little bit?
Sure.
Do you think that college athletics, that enough has been done to address the issue of concussions, particularly football? Are you looking at what's happening in the NFL? Is there something college ADs can learn from the experience of the NFL? What not to do?
Yeah.
Or-
Well, again, sometimes the best learning experiences are what not to do. So I think the answer to are we doing enough with concussions is no, and will always be no, because the research and the technology and the knowledge is always out in front of us. So the answer to that will always be no. The question is, and the important part is going to be, are we devoting enough time, effort, and resources to staying as far out in front of it as we can? Because there's nothing more important than the health and safety of our students. It's interesting you say particularly football. Now, obviously, again, football is our highest visibility sport, but we hockey, ice hockey, field hockey,
Right.
lacrosse. I come in
Men's volleyball.
Men's and women's volleyball, particularly men. The velocities, although our women hit as hard as our guys do.
Cheerleading, right?
Yeah, well, or any sport where you can have a fall that
Right.
soccer, absolutely. What I come from my previous institution, water polo. Again, same reason as volleyball, the velocity of the ball. So I think it's a very serious issue across the board. I'm very proud to say that, first of all, through our association with the Hershey Medical Center, our team physicians, all of the physicians that work with our teams, it is very, very high, not only on their priority list, but also in making sure that we have the right experts around the table. There is some of the best cutting edge research around concussions going on our campus, in our School of Health and Human Development going on. Our athletic department is partnering with those on our campus, our faculty members who are leading edge researchers, particularly one around brain cooling and that's post concussive,
Right.
and how to limit the effects. I will tell you that the area of return to play, the area or the decisions around pulling kids off the field, I think the most critical step that we need to take, and I don't know of an institution that's not taken this step, so I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, but it's that we had to take the playing decisions must rest in the hands of medical professionals. The athletic director shouldn't be making that decision. The coach shouldn't be making that decision. And I think the next steps are around education and what are we looking for, and that it's so the decisions are in the hands of the medical experts, but everybody around our student athletes, including other student athletes, have a role to play in. Hey, doc, you need to take a look at him, or her, or that kind of thing. So I think it's really serious. I do think that there's a lot we still don't know, and unfortunately we're starting to learn it, because the individuals who competed as we started to get into helmets and higher velocity in terms of flying bodies, etc., are starting to get of an age where we're seeing some of the impacts. Can we control for other issues and know that and really pinpoint what the results or impacts are of concussion? I think we need to make sure that we can do, and I'm no scientist. So.
Is there an NCAA concussion protocol the way there is now, sort of, in the NFL? Like
Yes.
Immediately after it happens, here's what.
And there are guidelines, and we passed in.
I knew there had to be, but I just don't remember.
We passed in January.